Hey guys, it's Jen and I'm here with another wrap-up video. So this is for books 31 through 35 from 2017. Now I don't know if you guys noticed in that thumbnail, but I actually read 5 physical books for this one. So there's no audiobooks, 5 physical books. So that's 5 books off of my bookshelf, which is crazy. The 31st book that I read this year was Afterworlds by Scott Westerfeld. I have been wanting to read this one for quite a while. This one gets a lot of mixed reviews, I think. It's about this girl named Darcy who writes a book. She's a teenager and she writes a book and it gets published, and this goes through the publishing, like the whole editing her book and rewriting what she needs to rewrite, becoming an author for a young adult book. It also, at the same time, tells the story, like has, like every alternating chapter is telling her story. So you read one chapter from her and then you read a chapter of her book, and then it continues like that throughout the book. And I thought it was a really unique idea and I really enjoyed reading this. And after I finished reading this, it really made me wish that I could write a book, because I literally have no ideas for books and I'm just not a very good writer and stuff like that. But this really made me wish that I could write a book. It made me want to sit down and write, which is pretty neat. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. So her book is a kind of a paranormal. So there's it's a contemporary and a paranormal mixed together. The two books alternate, and I think it works really well. I give this a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad that I read it. It's not my first Scott Westerfeld book, but I do really enjoy his writing style. And I just think that this idea is very unique. I thought it was a very unique style to write the book in, and I just thought it worked really well. So if it sounds like something you'd be interested in, I definitely recommend it. It was a really good read. So the next book that I read this year was 15 Dogs by Andre Alexis. This was the winner of the Canada Reads award this year, and I pretty much picked it up because of that. I hadn't heard of it before that, but I was like scrolling through Facebook and they were announcing the winner, and I just popped in to watch the video, and it seemed like a very interesting premise for the book. So what this book is about is Hermes and Apollo make a bet that if they were to give any creature human consciousness and language, would they be happy? Like, would they be happy for their entire life, or would they die happy, or whatever? So essentially, the way the bet was worded was they had to be happy at their moment of death for, I believe it was Hermes, to win the bet. But this book takes place in Toronto. They give 15 dogs this human consciousness, and then it follows those dogs throughout their lifetime and shows all the troubles that they have now that they can understand humans and like understand their thought process. And it just shows like what that gives these dogs. Like, it's really interesting, and I gave it a 4 out of 5, and I would definitely recommend this book. It was very unique. It was a very unique read for me. I've always enjoyed reading books from an animal's point of view, but they don't normally have like this kind of point of view unless it's like a fantasy. Then they might have like human thoughts and consciousness, but this was just really good. And especially when like the dogs, like, because they can remember their previous lives somewhat, they're just their thoughts on that was very interesting as well. And then their thoughts, like, it shows at one point some of them decide that they don't want to be like different from other dogs. They want to be like normal dogs, and it just shows what kind of situation can come about from someone from not wanting to change. But it's really good, and I would definitely recommend this book. Another book that I read this year was King's Cage by Victoria Aveyard. This is the third book in the Red Queen series. I guess there's 4 books now. I thought this was the last book when I bought it, and then I learned that there's a 4th book. So I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5. I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail about this book in particular, just because it's the 3rd book in the series of 4. But if you don't know what the series is about, it is about this girl named Mare, who is a red. So she has red blood. And then there is this hierarchy in her society that have silver blood. And the silvers also, they're referred to as silvers, and they have powers. And then Mare is trying to save her friend from having to conscript in the military, because it's pretty much mandatory unless you have a job. So he ended up losing his job, and she's trying to find a way to help him by getting some money. So she's trying to steal some money, gets caught. And, you know, it just, a bunch of things come about from that, and somehow it ends up being discovered that she also has a power. So the silvers don't want the other reds to know that there's a red with a power, and they try and like play it off like she's some long lost silver, and it just goes from there. And you know, anytime someone tries to do something like that, it just goes off crazily. It's a really good series. I really enjoyed it. I didn't like this book as much as I liked the other 2. I still really liked it because I gave it a 4, but I didn't like fall in love with it like the other 2. This one, I felt like there was a lot of filler in this. But I did still really enjoy it overall, and I will be continuing on with the series when the next and final book, I believe it's supposed to be the final book anyways, comes out. The next book that I read was for my book club, and that was An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I've heard nothing but amazing things about this series, and it literally took me forever to get around to reading it. And I think the only reason that I got around to reading it was because it was a book club pick. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5. This is a fantasy that follows a girl whose brother has been imprisoned by the hierarchy. There's lots of hierarchies in the books that I read. He's been arrested for treason, and she decides to become a spy for the resistance, so they will help save him and get him out of prison. So she ends up having to spy on the most dangerous woman in, like, the society. And it was really interesting. It's told from 2 points of view. There's Leia, who is the girl whose brother has been arrested, and then there is also Elias, who is on the other side of things. He's one of the best soldiers in the Empire. This book has like Roman roots to it, and Leia's people are called scholars, and the Empire doesn't like the scholars, and they like took them over and made them slaves and took away basically took away everything from them. They're not allowed to have books and things like that. It's a very interesting fantasy novel. I really enjoyed it, and I'm definitely continuing on this series. I don't know why it took me so long. Everyone loves this series, and I've heard so much hype about it, but I just never got around to reading it. So I'm glad that I read it, and I'm definitely continuing on this series. And the 35th book that I read this year was Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray. This is the 2nd book in the Diviners series, and I absolutely loved it. It was so nice to be back in the 1920s with Evie and all of the rest of the Diviners. This one has a lot of dream walking in it, and it was just like dream walking. Essentially, they're diviners who can enter dreams and talk to people and change dreams, and it was just really interesting. It was creepy, just like the first one. There's a lot of creepy stuff going on, and I just really enjoyed it. I don't want to go into a whole lot of details, but it's like a mystery based in the 1920s, like a paranormal mystery, I guess, where they're trying to figure everything out. But it's just really good, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to be reading the next book whenever it comes out because it's not out yet. But very glad that I finally gave this a read. I read this for Tome Topple because it's a pretty big tome. But yeah, it was really good. I gave it 4 out of 5, and I'm looking forward to continuing on. It's just really hard to explain this series. If you haven't read the first book, you should definitely read it because it's very good. And who doesn't like reading books in the 20s? It's just a very neat sounding time period, other than like women's rights, because, you know, we didn't have any, but I feel like it would have been a fun time to live. So these were the next 5 books that I read in 2017. Let me know down below if you've read any and what you thought of them, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!